Is it aligning with God's word? I had a mentor who's an evangelist whose thing was a good idea is not necessarily a God idea. And how do you know what a God idea is? Because when it's a God idea, things open up for you. It's not that you don't have challenges, but they open up in a different way. You're not fighting for it.
Hello, welcome to the Shattered Mindset podcast. I'm your host, Melvin Larry. And listen, we're going to talk about wisdom from life's turning points and defining moments. And today's guest is someone who embodies resilience, creativity, and truth. She's an actress, comedian, producer, and storyteller whose journey spans radio, television, film, comedy, stages, podcasts, digital media. Look, you may know her from her unforgettable role in Stand and Deliver or her appearances on The Jeffersons and other iconic shows. But what makes her story so powerful isn't just the credits, it's the way she made a lane where none existed. She started in radio at just 13 years old, helped shape the sound of urban contemporary music, broke barriers as a Latina comedian with funny ladies of color and hot and spicy mamitas, and has spent decades producing with none other than Robert Townsend, proving that staying power is built, not gifted. She's also a truth teller with a heart for empowering others to stop waiting for permission and start owning their own voice. So today, we're not just talking about a career, we're talking about a journey of grit, grace, and legacy. So, Lydia Nicole, welcome. How are you doing?
I am blessed. I feel fortunate. I am grateful to be here with you today.
Yeah, I am grateful for you to be here today. It's just a blessing to me for you to be here with us on the Shattered Mindset. And you're just such an icon in your industry and in the things that you do. So just to have an opportunity to sit and to just chop it up a little bit from you, with you. And we talked in the introduction there about your start. But how about you give us your take on your start?
I would say that growing up in Spanish Harlem made me very scrappy. I grew up on the wrong side of the track, and whenever I heard a no, I was determined to get a yes. I started, and I would say one of my big training moments was in Catholic school as a little kid. You know, we sold things in Catholic school. And I became the champion seller because I never took no for an answer. And that also meant when cops tried to chase me away, I made them buy my chocolate before I left the area. So that tells you a lot about me.
Wow, that does say a lot. There's some things, there are some things that are just inside. My grandson is 7 years old. He plays football. I got one that plays baseball and soccer and all of that stuff. But he has a talent. When you see him, it's like you just don't tell a person or kid how to do that. So, what was going on in your mind at that time that made you believe you belong in the spaces where you were, even so early?
Ah, man. I would just say first of all, I was born into a mother who was a prostitute and a father who was a pimp. So that started that started it all. And as a little kid, I grew up at a time when girls were second-class citizens, and I refused to accept that. So my competitors were always the boys. I was always competing against the boys. I had no time for the girls because I wanted to do what the boys did, and that meant that I could do whatever I wanted to do. So, in Catholic school, I wasn't the smartest kid academically, but I was the smartest and the most resilient when it came to, talking to adults, reasoning with adults, and getting my point across. And that is my gift that God has blessed me with, and I've used it ever since, as well as, being able to read people. And because of my upbringing, there was a lot of alcohol, a lot of drugs, a lot of chaos in my home. I learned to read people at a very early age.
Oh, wow.
And
That's
so
really cool.
that really, helped me. It has strengthened my superpower, so to speak.
I love that. I love that. So that I would say that that probably helped to shape how you saw the world, coming up in that. I just had a gentleman on an episode or so ago who said his dad was a pimp, his mom was on drugs and things of that. And it's amazing how people can come from certain backgrounds and then often have such different outcomes. How one person may come out of there and become a drug addict or a prostitute. Another person comes out of there and becomes a champion and does some great things. And so, what is it about you that helped you to go in the direction that you went?
Well, I can remember having encounters with God when I was 3 and 4 years old. One specific time, I was in a closet, an armoire. I was hiding in there, and I had gotten my mother's scissors, and I decided I was gonna cut off my hair. And I was cutting my hair, and I was talking to God. I came out the I came out of the closet, and my mother freaked out. As a kid, I was always doing crazy things. I remember seeing a neighbor who was, babysitting us, uh, plucking her eyebrows. So I went and got my mother's razors and just shaved off my eyebrows, and I was probably about 4 years old, but I was always doing stuff. I was always paying attention to what people were doing, and I was copying it, and I just remember the presence of God at a very early age, and I always share this with people that we were not taught religion in my home. My mother sent us to Catholic school because she thought that was the law of the land. But I had a relationship with God as a little kid, and that is what saved me probably, and what has kept me all along.
Well, how did you know? That's interesting that you said you had that relationship with God at such an early age, but how did you know that then? Because you were not in a religious situation. And then how do you equate those things that you did with the eyebrows and the hair? How do you associate that with your awareness, God awareness in your life?
I You know, I think that as little kids, we all know God, whether we name it or not. As a little kid, you are able to see things adults have chosen not to see. As a little kid, I was able to see spirits. I was able to see the spirit world. Um, and so it it just it what it did was it just informed me. So I was able to tell the people that were truth tellers and those that were not. The people who were trying to con you and those that were not. And I can't tell you, I don't think I knew anything intellectually. I just knew in my spirit that I was talking to God. I don't I can't, and to this day I still can't tell you. I can just say I can feel the presence of God. I can feel peace, and I would say to anyone who's listening, identifying God is when you can identify God without n having, uh, the knowingness, you identify him by peace, by love, by joy, and
Wow.
abundance. And so if you are in a place where it is peaceful, know God is there. If you are in a place where there is joy, that's where God is. If you are in a place where love is, that's where God is, because the Bible tells us God is love. The Bible tells us that the peace of God there's nothing like the peace of God. I can't think of
It
that scripture
passes
right now, but
understanding.
that's right. It's like it is there, and we wanna get to the place where we can align ourselves with God's peace all the time, even when there's chaos around us.
Yeah, so that's all the time too. Chaos. So was there a time in your life or an age in your life when you gained more of a realization of the things that were shaping your life?
Uh, I don't know. I I I don't know. What I will say is I was always an adventurous child. I was always I was always looking out to I was always curious. So, at 5 years old, I got on growing up in Spanish Harlem, my father lived in the Bronx, and I remember my father coming to get us. He would pick up the kids on the weekend on Fridays and keep us the weekend and then bring us back to my mother on Sunday mornings to go to church. But I remember, being 5 years old, coming home after school because they had a big Christmas event, and we got toys from the Marines, and I got home a little too late, and my father took the other kids and left me. And
Mm,
I was not happy, and I told my mother, "You gotta take me to Poppy," and she was like, "Well, if you wanna go, you go on your own." I said, "Okay." So
at
I
5?
left at 5. So I left well, actually, I think I just turned 6 because it was December, and so I was 6.
Grown then, right?
And I went and got on the subway and went to my father's house, and when
At
I got on the
6
subway
years old.
yeah, when I got on the subway, the adults were like, "Where's your mo where's your mother, your father?" And so I had to create a story, "Oh, I lost them, but I know where I live." And this kind young woman took me to my father's.
But even with that situation and the help that you got along the way and everything, can you even remotely imagine a 5 or 6-year-old child going and getting on the subway today?
Not at all. Not
Not
at
at
all.
all. It just wouldn't
Not at
happen.
all.
This is a
Not at
different
all.
time, huh?
Yeah, but
Wow.
I would do stuff like that. That was, I would just I was I was just going on.
Well, so let me tell you, you talked about growing up in Spanish Harlem, and and I know about growing up in a community of your culture and so forth. But when you start looking into the world and going into the world to do different things, you find yourself in positions where you're needing to step outside of your culture to move forward in that. When did you start stepping out? When did you become aware of the resistance you might find, and what did that look like?
Well, first of all, I was very fortunate. I grew up on Fifth Avenue between 111th Street and 112th Street. And our neighborhood was very mixed. It was Black, it was Latino, we had Jewish people who worked the stores, we had, down the street, we had the Chinese restaurant that actual Chinese people owned. So, the community, um, because I was on the border of Spanish Harlem and Harlem, I had access to the whole entire community. And, um,
Awesome.
and so I didn't really get into and then I went to Catholic school. You had white nuns, you had white brothers, or they were Irish, and if we went down maybe 8 blocks, it was an Italian community. So, growing up in New York, you have a lot of cultures colliding together. You're having to deal with everybody. I didn't really get into stuff culturally until I was in high school when we had to fill out forms to identify our ethnicity. And so I would always do other because my mother was Black and my father was Puerto Rican, and I was like, "Okay, none of these boxes really, define me, so let me put other," and I would get in trouble a lot because I
Mm.
put other, and it wasn't to be a smart aleck. It was just that's how I saw the world. My mother had one particular way of looking at stuff. My father had a way of looking at stuff. The neighborhood had a lot of my mother and father both came from Caribbean islands. My father from Puerto Rico, my mother from St. Thomas. Her mother came from St. Kitts. My mother's grandfather was from Trinidad. So it was very Caribbean based, and it was and Caribbean people are very much into, uh, being achievers,
So
it's about achieving.
yeah, that's awesome. And in light of that, you found yourself achieving different things at different places, and even at 13. But coming up to that time, what brought you from where you were as that 6-year-old on the subway to that young lady at 13? What brought you there?
It was the same it was nothing different. When I was 13, I used to listen to my I had 6 siblings. My mother felt that we needed to just, be friends with our siblings, we didn't need outside friends. So, yeah, that didn't work for me. And since I could not really hang out with most of the kids outside a lot of times, um I listened to the radio. That was like a big thing for me, those little transistor radios. I used to steal them from my mother. She would buy these little radios. I would take it, put it under my mattress under my pillow at night and listen. And somehow, some way, that volume would go up and my mother would find it and then she would break it. But at 12 and 13, I was listening to a radio station in New York called WBLS. And the disc jockey that I loved to listen to, his name was Frankie Crocker. So I decided he needed to meet me. Not I wanted to meet him. He needed to meet me. And that's the
Wow.
type of kid I was. People needed to know me. I was not going out going, "Oh, I want to know them." I was like, they need to know me. And don't ask me where I got that from, but that was, I just walked like people needed to know who I was. And
Mm.
because of that, I ended up, going to the radio station to meet him, and then I came back, and then I came back a 3rd time, and the 3rd time that I came back, his assistant put me to work. She said, "You're coming here every day, you might as well, do something." So she offered me a job. She said, "I'll give you, $10 a week and you will open the mail, you will file the records, and you will help in whatever way we need you to help." And that's how I started at the radio station.
Wow, wow. And then you just took that and you found yourself in comedy and everything. When did you know that you were funny?
I was always telling jokes as a kid. Part of it was my mother suffered from depression,
Mm.
and she had a lot of emotional stuff going on, so I felt like my job was to make her laugh. So I would come in and tell stories to her. I would have these stories, I would make try to make her laugh any which way I could. And as a kid from I wanna say I was maybe 8, 9, my mother entered a, day program from 9 to 5. It was called, PHP, Partial Hospitalization Program for people who had emotional problems. And at that program, half of the floor was for that program, and the other half was for methadone, patients. And so on the side for PHP, they had therapists, psychiatrists, they would do, therapy groups. They would do, all kind of therapy for the people that were there. So as a little kid, I got to roam around that floor when I wasn't in school, and I would, hide in the closets to listen to the stories, and I would hear the stories and fall out of the closet laughing. So, I would then take those stories and embellish them and go and share them with people to make them laugh. And there were the psychiatrists, there were and because of me doing that, they kept all the closet doors open because the patients
That was
were
your start, right?
mortified. The patients were mortified. So,
Wa
that is how I started my comedy journey was, because of that program.
wow, wow. Well, tell me a little bit about your first time on the stage in front of some people. What was that like?
Oh my goodness. Well, the first time I was actually on stage, I was in 4th grade. I helped bring a cake out, for a a I think our school was celebrating a anniversary, and we brought the cake out, and then the second time I was on stage, I was in 5th grade. We were doing some little play, and I remember having potato chips and eating them, and the audience fell out laughing, and that was when everything really stuck. In 1st grade, I knew I wanted to act. That
Mhm.
I saw a Christmas pageant and I was excited and upset at the same time. I told the nun, "How come nobody asked me to do that? I wanna do that." And that and that cemented what it was I was gonna do for the rest of my life.
You know, I saw a clip of you being interviewed by, I believe it was DL Hughley, and, uh and,
Well, I
so
wasn't interviewed by him. I did,
but being
comic
interviewed,
view.
introduced, I meant
Yes.
introduced. I said interviewed, introduced, I meant introduced by him, and you had a hilarious set there. Tell me about that, and where were you in life when that came about?
Well, I had probably been doing stand-up about 2 years. I already had an acting career. I had been, professionally acting for, I wanna say 12, 13 years at that point, but in Hollywood when I got to Hollywood in 1978, there were not a lot of roles for young Latin girls, young black girls. There were not that well, maybe a little more for black girls if you look black. But I didn't fit really in either of them, and I had to find my niche because I didn't have straight hair, curly hair, and most of the Latina girls that were being cast had straight jet black hair, and it wasn't me. So luckily, there was a program called, uh Hill Street Blues, and they hired ethnic people. So I was very fortunate in that I got my union card through because of Hill Street Blues. I got to do 3 episodes of Hill Street Blues. The producer of Hill Street Blues, was very kind and generous, and because of that, I got to work some of the other shows. But it wasn't enough to sustain a career, like, I wasn't making money that it would I had to have day jobs, and so, I decided I loved stand-up. I would go watch it, I would start writing out my material, and then I go, "Ah, I can't do it." I put it back in my drawer and go about my acting business and had day jobs. I have to stress, I had day jobs while I was, working as an actress pursuing my career, but I did a movie called Stand and Deliver, and when
Yeah.
I did that movie afterwards, it's another God story, but, um, God I had when we were shooting the movie, I had the 3rd lead in the film. when they edited, I looked like a glorified extra. All my scenes were cut, and I was devastated. I was like, "What? What is going on?" I thought and what's so interesting is I can't speak for other actors, but for me, every time I got a job, I thought, "Okay, this is gonna be the job that's gonna take me to the other side, of success. I'm gonna make it." It happened with the Jeffersons. I was like, "Okay, this is the one." I did a movie of the week. "Okay, this is the one." And then with Stand and Deliver, I just knew this was gonna be the one. And then when I saw the film and I had been cut out so much, I was devastated. But God spoke to me and he said, "You're gonna take this movie across the country and speak to the youth." So I was like, "Okay." So I call up, and this is again the little kid who jumped on the subway by herself. So I call up um, Eddie Edward James Olmos's publicist, and I say, "Hey, God talked to me and told me to blah, blah, blah." So I took him to lunch and he told me, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." I said, "Well, that's what God told me." He said, "Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you put together a proposal and then, give it to me and I'll just give it to the people at Warner Brothers." That was on a Friday afternoon. I called up a young man who used to work for me because I had no idea what a proposal was, but he worked for me at in radio. I said, "Hey, I need to do this proposal. I need help." And we sat down and we put together this proposal. I reached out at the time. My godmother was working at the Department of Education in New York. I said, "I want to do blah blah blah." I told her. She said, "You got it." We put together an itinerary. I called, BLS, because I still had family, the radio family still there, and I said, "Would you guys interview me?" But they said yes. So I had put together a week itinerary uh, for publicity for this movie. So I made like 10 copies at Kinko. I take it to the, place that afternoon. I took it oh, no, I'm sorry. I take it to the place Monday morning, 9:30. I'm at Warner Brothers. I hand it to the guy, and then he said, "Well, don't expect anything, but I'll pass it on." That was I get back home, my phone is ringing, so it probably took me half hour to get from, Warner Brothers to my home. I get home, the phone this was before cell phones, this was before pagers, any of that. I get home, my phone is ringing, ringing, ringing. I pick it up, he says, "Hey, they wanna see you now, and don't say anything about God telling you anything." I said, "Okay." So I rush back over to Warner Brothers. I'm in this little cubicle. The head of publicity comes over to me and she said, "When do you wanna do it?"
Wow.
I
Wow.
said, "Next week?" She said, "Let's do it."
Let's
And because of that, I toured across the country with that movie to high schools, for a year.
wow.
And from that, I realized I'm making people laugh. I don't even have a script. So I pulled out that material that I had been writing and putting back in my drawer. I pulled it back out, sat with a good friend of mine who was an actress, and we wrote like 4 minutes of material. I went up to a comedy club and the MC was Tommy Davidson.
Mm.
And it was an
More
open mic
so.
night. For people who don't know comedy, open mic is when anybody can get on the stage. You sign up and you get up and you say whatever you want in a couple of minutes. And I did it. I killed. And then I came back week after week, and probably the next 5 weeks I died on stage, but I still kept coming back. I still and then I started crafting my material. I started writing more jokes and learning about, comedy and, you know, working a room in a different way. So
Well, when you hit the stage as a comedian, and What was it about you in doing that that maybe the acting world hadn't seen yet? How did
Well,
you craft that that multi-talented, skill set?
in acting, I was all the parts that I would go up for were dramatic. I was not being seen in comedy, and so I was like, "I'm funny, I can do this." I produced my own play. I didn't wait for people, I would just do so I would produce my own showcases to show people I was funny, that and it didn't catch on, and then I produced my own one, what is it? One act play where I played a little, rock and roller, and the thing was I didn't have enough money to give it a long run, so I ran it for 2 nights, inviting industry people. At that time, we didn't have the technology to film it, that I could have it, so it was live. It was live, and then when it was over. Um, and then from that, a couple of years later, then I started doing stand-up because what I started seeing was people who were doing stand-up were getting deals.
Mm,
They weren't actors, but they were getting deals. So I said, "Okay, Imma start doing stand-up." So that's what I did, and then when I started doing stand-up, there were not a lot of women doing it, and definitely not women of color that were doing it, and then in the clubs in Los Angeles, if if they had one female, that was enough. They were not looking to have so because of that, I co-produced a show called Funny Ladies of Color, and we started in the same club I started out at in the Valley. We did it there. I asked the owner, "Hey, can we do a can I bring my show?" We split the door. You get half of the ticket, we get half of the ticket, and you get the drinks. How's that? And so
yeah,
I was hustling, it was like so we did it there a year, got a lot of publicity, lot of stuff, and then we're able to take it to the Comedy Store and do it there every Tuesday night. But we had to bring our own audience. So learning how to market and bring your people and I would tap into the sheriff's department, the police department, the fire department, the deaf community. It was like, okay, who can we bring who's gonna buy 2 drinks? Because that was the thing. In order to have the room, you had to be able to your audience had to buy 2 drinks
wow.
to be in the room.
Well, not only did you co-found the Funny Ladies of Color, you also did the Hot and Spicy Mamitas, and so,
Yes.
but they weren't just comedy acts, they were more like statements, weren't they? And, what would you say your message behind those movements were, and what did that mean to you?
Well, for Funny Ladies of Color, we wanted to show that it wasn't just white comedians, but that there were a lot of women out there. Sherry Shepherd was one of the women. Before she was Sherry, she was part of the show. Another woman was Carlise Burke. We had another woman named Lotus Weinstock, who was Lenny Bruce's girlfriend back in the day, and she was amazing. We had we just had a lot. We had a Korean, comedian by the name of Alexis Ree who played the violin. She was like um, a Korean, what was the guy's name? Lenny no, oh,
Not
shoot, I
Lenny
can't
Bruce?
remember. No, 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 there was an old-time vaudevillian comedian who used to tell jokes while playing his violin. I can't think of his name at the moment, but we had a lot of people, and we were very big on diversity, diversifying the women, showing that, there were a lot of funny women that had a lot to say. And so we did that for a few years, and then I left that group and it ended. But then I got an actress who was starting to do comedy who said, "Hey, let's do a Latina group. You know what to do, so let's do it." So I was like, "Okay." So we started Hot and Spicy Mamitas. We did that for 6 years. We toured, the country. We created a lot of, um, attention. The Latino press would follow us, and we would go, "Listen, we are not speaking Spanish. This is English." And so the struggle or the challenge was that they wanted Latinas to speak Spanish. And
Mm.
we're saying, "Hey, we are part of a population that does not speak Spanish. You're not catering to the English speaking Latinos." And
Well,
so
go ahead, finish that.
yeah, so it was challenging. So we did that for 6 years. We got a lot of play. We got a CD. The CD is still up. If you go to Apple or Spotify or any of the streaming, you'll hear the CD that we did, which is fantastic. It's still good today.
I bet it is. But that required a lot of vulnerability for you to, put yourself out there, and the world wasn't necessarily always ready to open their door for you at that time. How did you manage to keep your own belief strong enough to really build something of your own like that?
You have to know what your call is. Acting is a call. Being an artist is a call. It calls you, you don't call it. A lot of people will, uh, try acting, or they'll try stand-up, or they'll try singing, and it has nothing to do with talent. I have seen so many amazing, talented people show up in Hollywood and then leave with their tail between their legs because they think it's just talent, but it's not. It's about commitment, dedication, persistence, and 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 it demands that you keep going up the hill until you get to the top and you can settle yourself. But going up the hill is not easy because you'll go up the hill and you'll start sliding back down for a while, and you just got to keep going. You got to keep going. You have to trust and believe that God is going to get you to where you need to go. And I think part of it, of being an artist, is that you have to align yourself with God. God bless you. Oh, God bless you. God is the big creator, and we are the little creators. And so how are we creating? What are we doing? What is our purpose? The thing that I have found um disheartening sometimes with artists, and is that they forget where they're getting the gift from.
Mm,
I
mm.
use the gift not for me, I use the gift to glorify God. And I'm not trying to be, God, oh, Jesus, but I understand the mission. The mission is God gave me a gift, and he's saying, "I need you to use this to help people." So for me, my gift is to encourage people.
Many people think that, they feel like they're performing in life, on the job and in relationships and in the public, whatever they're doing in their careers. But what's the difference between really performing for acceptance and really performing for real truth?
When you're performing for acceptance, it is all about you. When you're performing for truth, it is about your mission. You don't have to believe me. I'm gonna tell you what I can see, and it's up to you to take it or not. For 10 years, I worked in the youth prisons, um, with kids as an artist, as an artist in residence. And one of the things that I learned very early on was the kids in there believed you if you told the truth.
Mm,
And that's what an audience is. If you tell the truth, they will believe you. And when
mm,
I would go in there, I would get challenged by the sheriffs, and they would go, "Why are you doing this? These kids are knuckleheads," and I said, "No, they're not. They are kids that need to be fed. My job is to feed them." And they said, "Well, they're not gonna." I said, "They're all gonna get it because my food is good food.
That's
They
good.
are all getting nurtured. They're all getting nourished. I'm not leaving here thinking I did not do my job. I know I did my job because sometimes I'm not speaking to you, I'm speaking to your spirit. So it doesn't matter if you got it here. I know you got it here."
Well, that brings me to something you said to me when we talked a couple of days ago, and you talked about transparency, and you've even said that the best actors are transparent. And
That's right.
what is transparency? Would you say that it means to you, and how can everyday people really tap into that, even if they're not actors? How can they do that? Tap into that transparency.
Just to be honest, when I think of transparency, the artist that I always think of first is Richard Pryor. Richard Pryor bared his soul. He was a very complicated man. He had all kind of crazy things going on, but when he came on stage, you saw into him. And intimacy is into me see. And so as a human being,
Say that
if
one
you
more time.
intimacy means into me see. Right? And so if you are an artist or if you are just a person living your life, you want to just be anchored in truth. And what is truth? It's God. God is truth. So I have learned as I've gotten older to have to show up with truth in a more compassionate way because sometimes, I don't know how familiar you are with the characters in the Bible, but I'm a combination between Peter and Paul. I'll cut your ear off and then I'll pray for you. And so I've learned, and I've learned this through, having my YouTube channel is it probably in the last 5 years. I've had it now 13, but probably the last 5 years, I've learned to be more, compassionate, more gentle with artists, to speak to them more from a place of love instead of just a place of, "Hey, you need to do this. What's wrong with you? Why are you not?" And it's like I've learned to bring more of God in my encouragement.
What do you think was is there a defining moment that brought you to that sort of a place? Did something happen? Was it a transition or where, I mean, you've done a lot of things. You've done some bold things. You've done some gritty characters like stabbing George Jefferson. Who would stab George? And you just played some really gritty characters, done some different things. What is it that helped you to find that side of yourself?
I think as you evolve, for me, I am a lifelong learner. So I'm always seeking information. I'm always looking at how can I make it better? I mean, if I go through just my YouTube channel, every time I do an interview, it's like, how can I make it better? What can I do to make it better? How can I make it better? And that has been the thing that has fueled me in my acting. I've always taken acting classes. I've never felt like, okay, I took 2 acting classes, now I know what I'm doing. No, because, you are I in life, whether you are an artist or just somebody who has a 9 to 5 job, you are hopefully always evolving. We go back to that question you asked about transparency. Well, maybe in work you can't be transparent because maybe that will get you in trouble, but you can be present. You can pay attention to what's going on around you. You can look and see what is happening. Acting is about being present. It's not about performance. Real uh excellent actors are they're just present. They've taken in the material, they know what they're doing, and now they're just having a relationship with the person across them. A great scene from a movie that really tells that is in the movie Heat with Al Pacino and and Robert De Niro. When they
One of the
finally
best
meet,
movies.
yeah, they finally meet, they're sitting at this little restaurant, it is crowded, and the 2 of them are just playing chess. They're looking at each other, they are so present, taking each other in. It is amazing when you see people being present because they love what they do, and I think that's the key. It's like, doesn't matter who you are, but do you love what you do? You know, you don't have to be a movie star or a recording artist, or but do you love what you do? I think of Cesar Millan, the dog whisperer. That man, the first time I watched that show, I was like, "Oh my god, this man loves what he does." And I love people who love what they do. It doesn't matter what it is. When I go to the supermarket, there are certain cashiers, they love what they do. They are always kind to the customers. They always have a good, happy face on them. Those people are joy-filled. They
Yeah.
love what they do, and they change the atmosphere, and when you are present and you are loving what you do, you change the atmosphere.
I heard a gentleman say once, he said, "When you're doing what you truly love to do, you never work a day in your life," you know? And, I think that also I'm still got, Pacino and De Niro going around in my head because that's just when we talk about the chess game that they played in the movie, I also felt like there was a chess game that they played in life in those parts because there were 2 greats who were facing off in the movie and outside and within themselves. There were 2 greats that were
Right.
actually facing off.
And what and if you wanna get a little deeper, you have Pacino, who was a Strasberg student, and then you had De Niro, who was a Stella Adler student. And
Explain that.
so okay, so Strasberg and, Lee Strasberg and Stella Adler were 2 great acting teachers. They were part of a group called what is it? The group, the something group. Oh, I can't think of the name, sorry. But they were part of a group, and in that group, they had some directors, they had some writers, and they had these actors. They went on a trip to Russia to meet Stanislavski, who was this great acting teacher. They come back from Russia, um, and Stanislavski had said, "This is a work in progress, it is not finished." Lee Strasberg took what he got from Stanislavski and said, "This is a program, and Imma do it." Stella was pissed off. She was like, that is not what he taught us. There was a work in progress." So um, she taught from historical stuff. If you are playing a doctor, you need to go shadow a doctor, learn everything you can about what a doctor does, embody that. So you know that this is their background, this is what they do. If you are doing a piece in the 1800s, you need to find out what year in the 1800s, know everything about that so that you can embody that time of that period of time. Strasberg was very much about emotions and, just l like creating something, but it was more emotional. It's not that she didn't give the emotion, but she wanted you to be anchored in a truth of it. So they clashed a lot. I never got to study with Strasberg, but I studied with Stella Adler, and I would hear her go off on Strasberg every chance she got. And I was in her class the day he died, and someone said, "Miss Adler, Mr. Strasberg passed away." She said, "It's about time." That was all she had to say. But what I loved, going back to Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, what I loved was that here were 2 very well respected actors who had an incredible body of work, and they both came together, and they both their stakes were very high. They weren't just there like, "Well, and what about you?" And it was a chess game for the championship. They played for the championship. They weren't playing just a practice game. They were like, "Oh, no. Okay, you're doing that. Okay. Well, let me tell you, I'm a," and to me, that's the best scene in the movie. When I
Mm,
saw it, I must have seen that movie, at least 10 times, 12 times, um, but every time I see that scene, that's the movie for me.
wow. I mean, that's huge, and you just watch greats like that, it's just, to me, it's a privilege to watch greats like that, to do something. But, people are different places in their lives, and, we have the greats that are doing what they're doing, and they had to start somewhere and so forth. But people in life, they sometimes think that they have to have permission to do this and to succeed in this. You forged your own way. And what do you say to people who are aspiring actors or comedians or business builders or aspiring CEOs or whatever? What do you say to people who are looking at their what they don't have right, instead of looking at their strengths? What do you say to that person to encourage them to move forward to their next place?
I I think I would say look at your why. Why are you doing this? Why do you need to do this? The biggest thing is your why. Why do you need to it does that why is not important to anybody else but you, because if you can answer your why and say, "I need this to breathe. I need this to, because I feel called to it. I need it." All you have to why? Because I need it. That's enough. That I need it. That's all. I don't have to give you a long explanation. I just need it. That why is going to carry you through all the challenges. It truly is about your why. Why are you here? Go back to what is your mission? If you can identify your mission and your vision, what is the vision that you keep having? And be courageous, right? So if you have a mission and you have a vision and you marry that with courage, you will become unstoppable. In the book of Joshua, the first chapter, God is talking to Joshua and he's saying, "Be courageous, be bold, don't be discouraged, don't be dismayed. I, the
Mhm.
Lord, am
Well,
with you
hey,
wherever you go.
wherever you go.
Study the word, meditate on the word day and night. Then you will make your way prosperous." It is not about the outside telling you. The outside always told me I couldn't. When I was a kid, the kids in my neighborhood berated me and made fun of me because of my mother. And so it was like, "So? Yeah, and?" It didn't stop me. Did it hurt my feelings? Sometimes it hurt my feelings, but did it stop me? No. Sometimes you will get your feelings hurt. Sometimes you will fail. But if you are focused on your why, you're gonna fail forward. Every time you fail is just another opportunity for you to figure out a different way. And
Wow.
and most of the times, it is about aligning yourself with your mission. What did you come here to do? Everybody, there's another scripture in the Bible that says, "For I know the thoughts and plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and give you hope and a future." God has already designated, whether you believe in God or not, the creator has planned for you in a specific way. The creator has something great and big. Nobody comes here to be a loser. Everybody comes here to do something. And whether it is being the janitor of a high school or a um a doorman on Fifth Avenue, whatever it is, be the best at it. When I was a little kid, one of the things that I would hear, um, Black people say all the time, and it was in me, "You have to be better than anybody else. You
Mm.
gotta do your best. You
Do you
cannot show
believe
up."
that? Did you believe that?
Absolutely. I believed everything they said. I would sit under these women and I would soak in everything they said, while kids were playing with kids, I was listening to the adults. What are they talking about? What are they you gotta show up. You gotta, I grew up, I'm a '60s kid, so I started when, the voting rights came in, Martin Luther King was, assassinated, Malcolm X was assassinated, Robert, Kennedy was assassinated, and I saw the passion in these older people that had fought, that had come out of Jim Crow, the women, coming into the feminist movement. I was a teenager in the '70s where women, and I saw this in the record business, in music, women were just starting to get their footing, but they were still treated like second-class citizens, but they were pushing through. So I believe that nothing is impossible for you, but
Yeah.
you have to believe it, right? I can believe anything for you, Melvin, but if you don't believe it, it's not gonna happen. And so you have to believe God put me here for a reason. When I was working with those kids in the prisons, I knew God wanted me there. And I remember praying one day, I was coming out of the facility. It had just been put on lockdown. I was sitting outside for like 4 hours. They were on lockdown and I was sitting. I said, "Why am I sitting here? Let me go home." And I ended up, I was leaving and I said, "Lord, the day I come here and I am afraid is the day I don't come back."
Mhm.
And I was working with a population, some of those kids were there for murder, mayhem. They were not little infractions. They were there for horrible things. But I was there to resuscitate their dreams. I
Mm.
was there to let them know who they were, who God made them to be. That just because they were there didn't mean their life was over. They were there, and now they were getting the opportunity to get structure, to learn how to go into the world and do whatever it was they wanted to do.
So,
That was my call at that time. And
well,
so
when you
we
look at
answer
that,
the call. I'm
yeah,
sorry?
no, and you're right on point here because I think that many folks, like a lot of my listeners, range between their 30s, 40s, 50s, and then we have the residuals who are under that or over that. I'm over that myself, but they're wrestling with the gap between where they thought that they'd be at this point in their lives and where they are, and some of them maybe institutionalized, different things. But what's something that they probably need to get over to move forward? And what are they getting wrong? Even people who are chasing their dreams, you see actors who are always doing it, but really anyone. What are they getting wrong, and what do they need to get over to build something that
I
lasts?
don't think it's getting over anything, I think it's getting through something. I think it's just, um, we may carry those scars with us for the rest of our lives, but that doesn't mean the scar has to carry us. It just means, "Okay, I didn't make it at 27. I'm 65 now.
Mm.
Now it's coming. Now it's coming." God answers our prayers not in our time, but in His time. And
So when you
and
think about that, you say it didn't come then, but it's here now.
it's here now.
What is the space that you're in mentally with that thought? It didn't come then, but it's here now. Because you could have different kind of thought processes with that.
Absolute, and I have. Back then I was rushing to get somewhere. I was, I was chasing stuff. If you're running after something, you'll never get there. You have to just stop and be present so it can get you. It's not
Have you
you going after it, it's you just being in alignment with what you have. Um, the hot and spicy mamitas was a really great idea, but it wasn't a God idea for me, and I remember in the 6th year, I was walking up the mountain, and I was crying and talking to God and saying, "But God, this is such a great idea, and we're so close," and he said, "But I didn't tell you to do that.
mm,
I
mm.
didn't tell you to do that," and I was sobbing, but you know that, and I was just going at it with God. When I came off that mountain, I was clear. I had to let that go.
Yeah.
It was a great idea, but it wasn't a God idea. And
Well,
sometimes you have great ideas, but they're not God ideas, and so how do you align yourself with God, with your mission, your purpose, your destiny? Because that was a distraction. I am grateful that I did it. I'm grateful for all that time. It has made me a wiser person. It's made me a better person. But that was 6 years it took away from me that maybe God had something else set for me, but I was too busy, wanting to make that happen. And so
was there ever a time when you saw it that you were in the middle of something that you felt was the right thing, but you walked away because maybe the cost was too high?
no, what I can tell you is, um, I was always trying to figure it out on my own. So I never gave God the opportunity to say, "Okay," other than I knew I was supposed to be in Los Angeles. At 18, I knew this is where I was supposed to come. And God took care of me, opened doors for me, made a way for me. I knew this is where I was. Once I got here, then it became about my will. What am I? Okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm gonna go and I first of all, I didn't have the tools, didn't understand. I was new in Christ in the sense that I had started going to a Pentecostal church, because of my brother. I got saved at 16. And I started to read the Bible because in Catholic school you didn't read a Bible, and I had issues with that. But I had a Bible, so I started reading my Bible. And I got into a really good church when I came out here, but I was still in my flesh. It was all about I want to be a movie star. I want to be a movie star. Okay, I'm chasing, I'm chasing, I'm chasing. And I was very fortunate, and I got to work in the record business. When I came to Los Angeles, I worked at Casablanca Records, and I went back to work in radio, and so I was in the music industry for probably about 14 years, and I got to see what happened to artists that, were all about their gift and not about the gifter. I still didn't get it. I mean, I saw it, but I didn't get it for me. And it wasn't until I would say, probably about 20 years ago, I put down everything and I said, "Lord," I was single mom raising my child. I said, "You know what? I need to raise my child right now. This is the greatest gift I have. I need to be a good steward, of my daughter." And so I just said, "You work it out for me. You will make a way for me. I'm going to do what you told me to do, which was to take care of my daughter." So that's what I was doing. I was doing production. I was, making my money, working with Robert Townsend, doing that. But I have put down all my all my desires, of an artist, just putting it down. And then I would get antsy and I would go, "Okay, I'm gonna," and then I was, "Wait a minute. Is it aligning with God's word?" I had a mentor who's an evangelist whose thing was a good idea is not necessarily a God idea, and how do you know what a God idea is? Because when it's a God idea, things open up for you. It's not that you don't have challenges, but they open up in a different way. You're not fighting for it. Things just you do the work and things just open. Um, and so about 13 years ago, I started doing the YouTube channel. I said, okay, I had a lot of friends. At the time, it was called Common Sense Mamita, because I felt like all my artist friends were not displaying common sense. They would do things without thinking, and then they had intense consequences. So I started doing the videos, and I started writing it down, and I've been faithful to do it and just do it. And how do I learn? What do I learn? And then about 2 years ago, I found MMU, which is how we connected, morning meetup with David Shantz and Seven Figure Podcast. And so even though I was doing it all along, um, I started to get mentors to really guide me the proper way. All during that time, I never felt what I was doing was out of alignment. It was just, "Okay, just continue the process, and just continue the process." It was not it wasn't a heavy lift. It was like, "Okay, what can I do this season? What can I" so I just made them seasons. "Okay, what can I do this season? Okay, I really wanna highlight Latino artists. Okay, what can I do this season? I wanna highlight Black artists. Okay, I wanna highlight artists from the record industry. I wanna" and so it was like, my mission was just to help other artists walk in clarity and understand their purpose, understand the business, not talent. There are a lot of people out there who are famous who have no talent.
Yeah.
But what they do have is persistence. What they do
Mhm.
have is confidence. What they do have is determination. And what they do have is an ability to tune people out who are saying negative things about them.
So you got people who are a lot of people who are in your industry and outside of your industry. That really makes me think about, what you're saying right now, that just like feel stuck. Man, I it's amazing how people can be 40, 50, even 60 years old and feel like I'm stuck. I mean, where do I go from here? What have I done? What has my life meant? That's why I'm really doing this is because, people are just kind of like in this twilight zone. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. They just feel stuck. And I know that you know a lot about that because you see people who will maybe like you say, transplant themselves from New York to LA or something like that, and it just doesn't happen the way that they want it to, and so some people say it's mindset, some people say it's just situations. What are your thoughts on people when they're just, like, in that twilight zone place?
Well, I do think a lot of it is about mindset. A lot of it is about not walking in gratitude. A lot of it is about being with the wrong people at the right time, and
Mhm.
they are the distraction. You know, there's nothing I can do about my past, but I can move in the direction of my future. So, I get to choose if I'm gonna let go of that baggage that I was carrying, or if I'm gonna keep that big old backpack on my back and crawl where I need to go. I decide that. I decide if I'm gonna walk as a victim or as a victor. I'm a
Yeah.
victor. When I was a little kid, there was a program called Fresh Air Fun, which, they would send inner city kids to go out into suburbia, live with, white folks who had a little bit more money. And the first time I did that, I was in New Jersey, and I get off the train, and the family I'm with, there's a daughter, and she's about my age. And so when they get me, I had a little tag on me, and they go, "We got our welfare baby. We got our welfare baby." I tell you that I carried that for a long time, that I never wanted to be anybody's welfare baby, so I carry that chip on my shoulder. It went from being a little, label to being a chip. And then it became a boulder. "Look, I am not your welfare baby." And then God said, "Just let it go." And I remember having, one of my dearest acting teachers, a man by the name of Roy London. I was in his class maybe for about a year at the time, and he said to me, "You know, you crawled your way out the ghetto. You can put the tools down. Now you
Mhm.
gotta new tools because what got you here is not gonna get you where you need to go."
Wow.
And so as we grow, we have to reevaluate our tools and go, "Okay, that got me here. Now I can let go of that. I need to find new tools. What are the new tools and who are the people that are going to help me with new tools?" MMU is a place where I'm learning a lot of new tools to help me. A seven-figure podcast, another place I'm learning new tools. Actionable CEO, another place I learn new tools. And I love finally being in a place where I am not the smartest one in the room at all. Um, and so when you talk about being stuck, we are stuck when we are focused on us and not on how are we helping other people? What is the gift that you have that can help somebody else? If you keep reflecting on what you didn't do, you are damaging yourself because all you keep feeding yourself is how you're not good. You're not good. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. That's you are victimizing yourself, and what I would say is stop it. Start looking at what okay, I didn't do that right maybe, but I tried. I did my best. So how can I show up and be better? How can I use this podcast to really, help people? How can I use this podcast, um, the Bible talks about iron sharpening iron. So when I'm doing my podcast, I'm sharpening you and it sharpens me. I'm not trying to sharpen me. I'm sharpening you because I know the what's going to happen is because I'm focused on you, it's going to come back to me. It's going to
Yeah.
bless me. So I would say if you're feeling stuck, then go do something. Go take a class of some sort, something that you never would have taken. Go take a dance class. Go take a art class. Go take a class on how to um how to make a dresser. Go take go to the fire station, find out when they're doing their next big, emergency class. Do something different. When you're doing something that's out of your comfort zone, you start to feel alive again. But if you're doing the same thing over and over again, and then all you're saying is, I'm stuck. Yeah, you're stuck because you're still doing the same thing over and over again, expecting something different. It doesn't work that way. You have to do something different.
Yeah.
Even if it means instead of going down Avenue A every time you go to work and you come back, then go down Avenue B. Just those little different things. There's so many wonderful videos on YouTube. You could learn something different. But that stuck is a selfish it's self-centered and it's selfish.
Well, speaking of doing so many things, I mean, that's a great take on it. I hadn't looked at it from the perspective of being stuck, being selfish. So you really kind of driven something home to me. And when I think about you doing this and doing that, you've done a lot of things. What are you working on now, and what's ahead for you?
I am getting back to my acting, getting ready to do my one-person show called A Rose Grows in Spanish Harlem, which is an autobiographical piece on me growing up in Spanish Harlem.
Wow, that's awesome. Fantastic. So then when you think about the next generation of comedians and actors and storytellers, m m how do you want them to remember Lydia Nicole?
Um, someone who was always going for something in spite of the fact that sometimes she was afraid.
That's awesome. Well, what last words so would you I don't like the term last words. What would you like to maybe leave with this audience if you're thinking about who they are specifically that are listening to this or looking at this? What's the message that you'd like to leave with them?
I want you to know that you are possible. When people say it's impossible, God says, I'm possible. And just like He is possible, He created you so that you could be possible. So don't take anybody's word for your future. You talk to God about your future. Put all the junk you've learned, all the baggage you've been carrying and let it go and see today as a new day. The beauty is that every day is new, but we're so conditioned to seeing it as another day. No, it's not another day. It's a brand new day, and you get to participate in new things. You choose if you will walk as a victor or if you will let society say you are a victim.
You know, I'm honored to have had an opportunity to be with you today. You've worked with some of the greats and you've had some of the most tremendous experiences, and you are a true superwoman yourself because you have forged some paths out of what really wasn't there. And so I'm privileged to have had an opportunity to connect with you and to be able to share this time with you here. And as other people resonate with you and want to, connect and stay connected with you and your body of work, how can they get connect with you on your body of work?
Well, they can go to lydianicolelive.com or they can go to my YouTube channel, Lydia Nicole Live. And there are a lot of great videos that I've done, not because of me, but because of the big man upstairs, but I have almost 1,000 videos up. So, there's a lot that they can be learning if they're artists and if they're just people who want something different.
Wow, thanks. That's huge. I appreciate that. So listen, I'm excited to again to have had to share this journey with you and for everyone listening, listen, I hope you caught more than just stories. I hope you caught the truth between the lines, the courage to keep showing up, the strength to pivot when doors are open, and the reminder that it's never too late to write a new chapter for yourself. So, Lydia, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you giving these listeners and myself an opportunity. And listen to all the listeners. This conversation just spoke something deep inside you, like it did with me. That don't hesitate to just share it with somebody else who needs to hear it. Don't just keep it, pass it forward. And until the next time, keep adapting, keep evolving, and keep reaching for those higher horizons. We'll see you the next time on the Shattered Mindset podcast. Thank you, Lydia. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Take charge. God bless.
So just hit the stop button,
Do
just
do
to
do.
stop recording. Just hit